two-directional marketing. You run it backwards, the numbers go down. Watch those pre-orders.
Cool.
See?
Yeah. Hasbro, you're a crook.
What?
This is illegal.
Do you make money? Do you have a corporation?
No, but don't people need good games? Can't you sell good
Games, Hasbro?
Listen, you little wiseacre. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Greetings, you over 5.5 thousand connoisseurs of culture, and welcome to today's episode of How WotC is Screwing You. Stay caffeinated. The 2024 edition of DnD 5th edition, which I will be simply referring to as 2024e from now on, should have been a moment for casters and marshals everywhere to finally band together, throw aside our differences, hold hands singing Kumbaya in the war of Ukraine, and stop world hunger. Obviously, I'm joking. But still, a successful launch is no less than what D&D deserves on its 50th birthday. But the launch has been overshadowed by controversy after controversy. So let's break out our Sherlock detective hats, our newsboy fedoras, and peel back the layers of why 2024e is swiftly becoming an unmitigated disaster before our very eyes. A DnDisaster, if you will. Starting with Hasbro's biggest kryptonite, which seems to be their inability to simply stop stabbing their customers in the back. Because everybody knows about the most recent changes to D&D Beyond and them deciding to forcefully update the player's handbook only to back down from it. Absolutely bully behavior.
I'm tripping, man.
You want me to ask for my books back?
You know I wouldn't trip.
What books?
And with a move literally worse than Aussie breakdancing, the whole community was left yet again to ask,
what are you doing? Making a mistake. Making a mistake.
And so yes, the backlash from the community was swift and thunderous, causing them to recant almost immediately, but it still left WotC with some egg on their face and put a bitter taste in the mouth of the community to match the sour taste from the OGL scandal. Because two things. One, yeah, they changed their mind, but now the community is aware of their ability and their intention to alter or remove the content that that person has paid for. And they'll backpedal and say, yo, we're listening to your feedback. But if they really cared about customers' feedback, then they would ask the customers what they wanted before making these large sweeping changes to the entire platform, okay? So they clearly don't respect the customer. They clearly don't really care about what the customer thinks because they don't ask what the customer thinks. And now that's out in the open for everyone to see. And we've seen this behavior before from other gaming companies, yeah. And we hated it then too. Replacing the old with the new without player consent. That's exactly what they did to Overwatch. Actually erasing the old Overwatch game in the process and replacing it with Overwatch 2. And how did that fare? Overwatch 2 is now a shadow of its former self. And don't even get me started on Blizzard absolutely wrecking their classic Diablo servers just to forcefully update everybody to a newer, better monetized Resurrected edition, essentially locking or erasing or ruining characters that people literally put thousands of hours into. And now Diablo 2 is unfortunately a shadow of its former self. And even Valve, the owners of Steam, made this same mistake, changing CSGO to CSGO 2, just forcefully updating everybody without warning anyone, causing the game to get review bombed by over 100,000 disgruntled gamers. And even Bethesda recently has been facing backlash for randomly releasing a patch to Fallout 4, a game that's nearly 10 years old by the way, that completely breaks the majority of the game's mods, which are literally the lifeblood for that game. And they did it all, literally with no warning, no communication beforehand. And now we have WotC employing that very same corporate strategy here in the tabletop RPG space. All of what I just said is fact. Now what follows is my opinion. I feel like WotC is always testing the waters. They're always doing little things here and there to see how far they can go, what they can get away with, like a creepy boyfriend. More than any other tabletop RPG company, Wizards of the Coast treats the customer like we're in the way of their profits. Because if the customer had their way, then just by the nature of tabletop RPGs, D&D wouldn't look like that digital monetized subscription online only D&D that Hasbro really wants D&D to be. And that makes them hostile toward the consumer. Not outwardly necessarily, they're still going to put on their shows, they're still going to have their events, but their business tactics have become hostile. I would even say ruthless. Now, I'll also admit that this is just my opinion, but I don't think that changing the website, removing the books or whatever, is that big of a deal in of itself. I just don't. However, we're still absolutely correct, and we must rally against these types of corporate actions because of what they represent. No corporation should be able to just retroactively alter or remove content that you paid full price for, at least not without your express consent. Just because it's digital content doesn't give them the right to cross that boundary. Just like if I had a book on my bookshelf, I don't expect somebody from the company to come in my house, take it off my bookshelf, and tell me, okay, I'm gonna put it on the dresser instead. What? And just like they wouldn't come into your house and change your books on your shelf, they shouldn't be in your D&D Beyond changing your books around, taking content off, removing things from the character sheet without asking you if that's okay with you first. And so the whole it's better to ask forgiveness than permission mindset is bad for the video game industry, and it's bad for the tabletop RPG industry. But these companies are savvy financial entities worth billions, so they must know how to handle money. So then why risk pissing off your customers? Well, funnily enough, Hasbro continues to overstep their boundaries with the consumer because it's good for business. Some people may leave the brand, may get angry and go, but the majority of people will stay, and those that stay will pay. Because do not forget, my friends, that Hasbro purchased D&D Beyond for $143.5 million, and those millions need to be recouped. So if anyone honestly think Hasbro isn't going to milk D&D Beyond for every little copper that they can, I don't even want what you're smoking. Just opening your eyes, you can see that Wizards of the Coast has been inching more in an anti-consumer direction as the months roll on. And if you're curious about, well, how can pissing off your customers be a benefit? Well, here's a couple ways. In my opinion, Hasbro has just tried to strong arm more players into buying the 2024 edition just out of pure convenience. Now, for people who already struggle to handle all of the variety of moving parts in D&D, because it is complex, both for DMs and for players, the added inconvenience now of having half your content removed, that is inconvenient enough that a lot of people may just say, fuck it, I'll upgrade. This method of injecting fabricated inconveniences and then selling the solution back to the consumer is something that video game companies have been doing for years with loot boxes, XP boosters, and other pay-to-win mechanics. So again, we've seen this before, but it's even worse than it seems in this situation, because did you know that D&D Beyond quietly walked back the option to buy a la carte content or individual content from certain books? Yeah, that's right. Because if you want to buy a class feat or a ability from a certain book, you can no longer pay that $1 or $2 to get that one item. You gotta buy the whole book. What if you don't have that $20 to $60 that the book costs?
Fuck you, pay me.
So if WotC had their way, the folks inconvenienced by the D&D Beyond changes would not only be pressured into buying the new book for convenience, but they'd be forced into buying the entire book, the full book. But this is a sales tactic too, a well-known one, because once the consumer pays $30, $50 for the new book, they'll have what's called skin in the game, and thus be more likely to buy content from you later on. So this is all very well planned and calculated, nowhere near as oafish as WotC tries to make themselves out to be. Now, Hasbro did release a statement to this, and I do want to read it to you because I think that it's very interesting about the mindset of this corporate entity. So they say, our excitement around the 2024 core rules led us to view these planned updates as welcome improvements and free upgrades to existing content. We misjudged the impact of this change, and we agreed that you should be free to choose your way to play. Taking your feedback to heart, here's what we're gonna do, and then they talk about how they're gonna change their plan below. And so it's interesting to see it from Hasbro's perspective, that a company is worth almost $10 billion, D&D Beyond, 143 million, which is enough money for several lifetimes, by the way. That's still just such a small percentage for this company. Like, is this corporation even capable of conceiving on how massive of a scale that they truly operate at. Because realistically, D&D Beyond has 10 million active users, so if we were incredibly generous, we could say that all of those tables have 10 players. That's still hundreds of thousands of games that you're affecting. And no change is small when it impacts 10 million users. And this highlights why community feedback should be like gold to a corporation this large, because they are quite literally too large to stay in touch. But this leads to the more nefarious goal, and that's the deceptive marketing. WotC has the data. They know what the pre-order numbers are, what D&D is trending at. Had they forced people to use the 2024e content, they could technically say, look, millions of people are playing 2024e, and undoubtedly try to use that as a marketing carrot, because it looks good to show your shareholders. If the product doesn't sell well per se, but there's still a shit ton of people playing it, that can be leveraged as a platform for growth, which can still look very attractive to a shareholder even if the game doesn't sell well. But it truly is a shame that WotC's betrayal of its content creators and its community with so many scandals, starting with the OGL scandal, that's really made the greater community wary and suspicious of the company and basically everything that they do. But what about 2024e, the game itself? Is it any good? Well, it's not so simple, because there are a long laundry list of things that have gamers taking the whole wait and see approach. And so here it is, players' top 8 complaints with 2024e. 1, D&D is apparent lack of identity. It's no secret that D&D has departed from its roots, and that's not a bad thing per se. But the new edition does have some people asking just who is this game for in terms of the audience, because players who love that darker, crunchy, gritty D&D, they're still playing 3.5 in 4th edition. For the people who love that epic, heroic fantasy of 5th edition, they're just going to stick to 2014e, especially those tables that are in the middle of serious campaigns. So here we have this soft neon colored Fortnite-ified version that's a clear departure from the grittier, scarier artwork in 2014e. But was anyone asking for this change, And while it's true that you can't judge a book by its cover, many gamers did see the drastic shift in tone and art direction and subject matter as a clear indicator that this edition just is not made for them. 2, the inability to buy things a la carte on D&D Beyond. Without being able to simply buy the things you like from the new edition one by one or piece by piece, now gamers have to be 100% sure that they're going to upgrade before they spend that full price, that $30 or that $50, which means that 75% of people are just not going to spend the money. They're not going to spend any money. They're not going to buy the book, and they're not going to buy anything from the book. The price gate is absolutely a roadblock, at least for some of the players that I know personally, who feel also miffed at the changes to D&D Beyond because they remember being able to buy things a la carte, and now they're much more limited to the things that they can build in terms of their characters. 3, and this is really one of the big, huge reasons, and that's the lack of support for Dungeon Masters.
Wizards of the Coast. Here was a quote that they posted on the D&D Beyond site. This is one of those where I read this and I was really mad. I was kind of insulted. And I was like, what the hell are you even doing? The fact that you said this makes me upset. Days. Who says a support build can't also deal damage? If your target fails a Constitution saving throw, they'll only get to move or take an action or bonus action on their next turn. Frustrating for Dungeon Masters, but fantastic for your party. Are you kidding me? Like, I saw that and I'm like, who are you making this game for? Why would I run this? If you're telling me, oh, we built things in here that are designed to be frustrating for Dungeon Masters, you're not advocating for DMs. Maybe you figured out some new way that players can play without a DM, but why would I do that? This is Jeremy Crawford was talking about it. Particularly the Fey Warlock is going to have a way to both hit a creature and make that creature want to attack them and having disadvantage on attacking anybody else, but they will also be invisible to that creature, which means that creature is at disadvantage on everybody. And Jeremy Crawford referred to this as like, monsters are going to hate this. And I'm like, when you say monsters are going to hate it, who do you actually mean?
And so this might not be so bad, given that the new DMG is coming out, and that will presumably teach DMs how to handle 2024e characters. Except that, in fact, the DMG is not coming out. And for this one fact alone, every single game master that I know has flat out told me they're not upgrading to the new edition, because the new player handbook is hundreds of pages of character options, spells, powerful new abilities. That's cool. Except that even WotC admit that the 2024e characters are slightly, just a little bit stronger than their 2014e counterparts. So what, you're gonna encourage DMs to upgrade to the next edition, possibly even in the middle of a campaign where the characters are gonna be even more powerful, but then you're not gonna give the DM the rule book, like the literal rules for the game, or a monster manual with which to challenge these stronger characters? Now, their answer to this criticism has been basically everything you need to run and play 2024e is in the player's handbook. One, just on pure logic, if one book is all that's necessary, then why release the DMG and monster manual at all, and why call them core rule books?
Wait, hold up.
Wait, hold up.
Certainly, if only one core rulebook was needed, like in Dishonored or in Fallout, where literally everything you need is just in the same book, everything for the game master's here, everything for the players is also here, then if this is truly was the case, then they would only print one book, not three. You can't just say that the whole game can be played with character options, but then give the DM no rules to run the game and no monsters. That's beyond baffling. Two, if the statement is true and everything you need to run the game is in the PHB, then you've literally given your customers no reason to buy the next two books. Three, WotC has actually contradicted themselves already, because in earlier marketing, they were saying that all three books were needed to play, that you'd have to buy the complete box set. Only after revealing that the DMG and monster manual were delayed to the next year did they switch their marketing to saying that everything you need is in the player handbook. But even if that were true and everything you needed to play the rules were in the player handbook, the players don't run the game. The Dungeon Master does. And this obvious disregard for the game master has many tables stuck in 2014e, because even if the players want to upgrade, the game master doesn't want to. 4, it is not as compatible as promised. Now, in my opinion, no new version of a game has to be compatible with the old version. And some would argue, in fact, that they shouldn't be compatible, because if they are you really coming out with a new edition? But it was WotC who took it upon themselves to promise a game that's compatible with 2014e. But with the rules out now, folks are starting to realize it's gonna take a lot of work to upgrade 2014 characters to 2014e and to sort of make that equilibrium work. They're just not gonna fit well into ongoing campaigns. Spells, feats, class abilities, leveling benchmarks, lineages, all of those are different, some of them slightly, but some of them vastly. But there are differing schools of thought as to how backward compatible 2024e is and will be once the DMG comes out, with Bob Worldbuilder basically saying that it is not a friendly edition for new players. On the other hand, though, the Dungeon Dudes would disagree, saying that it is basically compatible, though with some caveat.
If a class, subclass, feat, spell, or species printed in a previously published sourcebook appears with the same name in the 2024 PHB, you should use the 2024 version. And if a subclass, feat, spell, or species was printed in a previously published sourcebook, but was not updated in the 2024 PHB, you can use that. For the most part, as Todd Howard might say, it just works. But there's a couple problem pain points in there, so we're going to talk about them. On a case-by-case basis, there might be some subclasses that just kind of break with the new rules, whether either in a non-functional way or might be more overpowered. But for the most part, we're cautiously optimistic about saying it's mostly going to be okay.
From behind the Game Master screen, Professor Dungeon Master essentially says that this is just another edition in a long list of editions.
My belief is almost all versions of Dungeons & Dragons, except the 4th, are pretty much compatible with the other ones. And here's a heretical thought. You can use Pathfinder adventure pads with 5e games. A character or a monster is a target number and a bag of hit points. It's got some resistances and some special attacks. 1 or 2 points on this die is not going to break your game. Your players aren't going to burst into flame. But if that means you want to upgrade to the 2024 edition, great. And if you want to stick with the 2014 edition, that's fine too.
But regardless of which school of thought you belong to, everyone can unanimously agree that upgrading to the next edition is going to require at least a little bit of work on both the player and especially the Game Master's part. Because simply implementing the rules as they are, as WotC suggests, is just an open invitation for confusion at the table, because not everybody is a pro Game Master. Okay, most of my players who pay me to play are casual. They don't know so much the inner workings of the game. And so this just opens up a door for arguments between players and DMs, and further highlights that lack of support for DMs I was talking about, because upgrading your game in the middle of a campaign is more than likely to put a DM in a place where they now have to keep track of 2 different rule sets instead of 1. And you can tell me if you think that that's going to be simpler for the DM. 5. Rehashed content. While many will tout the new changes as being awesome, those like myself who are much more familiar with 2014e and all of its extra content have noticed that the best rule changes and the best additions are simply reworded, and in some cases not even reworded, content that's already been released in 2014 ebooks, namely Xanathar's Guide and Tasha's Cauldron. And the rest of the new rule tweaks are like homebrew rules that people have been playing at their table for the last decade anyway. And even when it comes to major improvements though, like their new weapon traits, I've been using weapon traits and armor traits too for a long time, homebrewed them years ago. And there are already many third-party releases that, in my opinion, add more depth to the weapons and to the armor too, giving them abilities and even special actions and bonus actions that you can do with them. So not only are WotC arriving late to the party, but fuller, more robust, and arguably better modules already exist with this kind of content that you can download from DriveThruRPG. But this perception of a lack of content that they're delivering is really mostly aided by 2024e's real Achilles heel, which is its staggered release, because WotC is only selling a piece of the game, only 1 of 3 core rulebooks. Some fans are just gonna flat out hold off. Some people just want to buy the whole thing at once. They don't want to pre-order a product that has actually been delayed already and may be delayed further. And they view purchasing the player's handbook right now as purely optional. And that's more to do too with how the game feels in its current state, because as of right now it feels like 7, an open beta. Because in the video game industry, that's what you call a game that releases as a half-finished work in progress. The players can still buy into it early so that they can play it, have fun, give you feedback before you release the final product. And guess what? This unfinished half-released game with only 1 of 3 books for you to buy already has a list of errata.
You're probably going to start seeing people talking about day 1 errata for the player's handbook. And it's kind of true, honestly. We're starting to see some discrepancies between what's in the physical printed books and what's showing up on D&D Beyond. These aren't secret things. People have already started talking about these adjustments, and it seems like a lot of that has been rectified in these D&D Beyond updates. The thing that sucks, though, is, again, if you have a physical book, you're basically out of date the second, this went on D&D Beyond. But this isn't anything new. I just wish we could get an official errata from Wizards of the Coast on, what needs to be changed or updated. Unless, honestly, they might just not know at this point.
So the PDF's out for like a couple days and already it's got a growing list of errata, which essentially makes this a super large-scale beta test. WotC have inadvertently made their own physical books obsolete before they even come out. Or was that intentional? Because we all know they've been trying to get this to go digital. And I would not be surprised if making the physical books the less optimal way to experience D&D is by design. Because if you buy the player's handbook today, it will be less useful or even completely obsolete, depending on what changes in the rules between now and that next year. And no one wants to buy a product that they know is going to be inferior. 8. D&D Beyond is currently bugging the fuck out. It's glitchy and it's broken and it's frustrating me and my players to no end.
D&D Beyond's kind of janky right now, so if you're using D&D Beyond as your character sheet or to run your campaigns, just be forewarned, your players may have some issues. For example, if you're using a 2014 subclass with a 2024 base class, the problem is if she goes to prepare her spells, those automatically default to the 2014 version. And as we know, the 2024 version of, let's say, Cure Wounds is 2d8 plus something, and then upcasts for an additional 2d8. That doesn't appear to work. My 2024 Life Cleric, the aid spell is supposed to be auto-prepared. just not happening. It prepares the correct cure wounds, but when it upcasts it, it's not upcasting it at 2d8 additional, it's adding only 1d8 additional. So there's definitely some issues here, and that is a minute fraction of the issues that are happening on D&D Beyond.
I have casual players who literally don't know anything about the next edition. They don't know anything about Wizards of the Coast. They don't know what company even owns D&D. They just play their D&D game, and that's what they know about D&D. And they didn't find out about the new edition until they were Googling trying to figure out why D&D Beyond was acting crazy. And they haven't even played it, and in fact don't know anything about it. And so that onboarding for the next edition is not the type of onboarding that you want for casuals who haven't even heard that the next edition exists. So all of this has been an extremely bad look, a lot of which, to me, from my perspective, I feel the cringe when I see them forcing out the player's handbook in its half-finished state. People are finding typos, people are finding rules that contradict each other, don't make any sense. But why rush out one core rulebook? Why not just wait? It's because this year is the 50th year edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro painted themselves into a corner, talking about all the exciting plans that they had for this 50th year, only to have to cancel or delay almost everything planned for this year. I wonder if it has anything to do with all those layoffs. But the 50th anniversary, a time where D&D should be celebrated, is ironically the same reason that it's getting this rush about hack job treatment, because they're going to capitalize on this year. They must capitalize on this year because the 50th year only happens once. Doesn't matter what state the product is in. Doesn't matter if it's half done or half released. They expect their audience to just turn off their brains and consume.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
And this strategy seems to work because this is the most popular edition of D&D by far, absolutely shattering all of the sales records from the previous editions. But as Madden and Call of Duty have taught me, there's very little correlation between how well a game sells and how good the game actually is. And unfortunately, when it comes to Hasbro, their actions have put their own community in a state of apathy. And as you all know,
apathy is death.
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 But I am a professional game master, so please do come to startplaying.games. Find me if you want to play with me and sort of see me back up all these things that I talk here on my channel. And please do tell me if you're feeling this same malaise. Are you different? Do you actually really feel excitement for DnD 2024e? I would love to know down in the comment. Do consider supporting the Patreon. I don't make any money from YouTube. That's literally the only way that I can do this. Oh, I have a swag shelf now that I was able to install thanks to the patrons. So thank you to my patrons for all of your support. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Like and subscribe if you do indeed like the video. Dislike it if you don't. Peace.